Welcome back to Lit versus Genre. I'm Steve on the lit side,
I'm Jeff on the genre side.
and we are going to dive back into Eye of the World. We decided, right, Jeff, to double back to the earlier Ravens prologue a little bit later. After you reread it, you said we should probably press on and come back to that a little later, huh?
Yeah. After taking a look at it, I mean, there's not really spoilers, I would say, that we need to be concerned about. But after doing a little more research and finding out that it was written for when the Eye of the World was split into two books for a more YA audience and a YA introduction, I think it'll be best for us to just kind of circle back around to it at the very end, talk about what we think of it at that stage. So we are just going to go ahead and press forward through this book to two to three, so on and so forth.
Oh, that's what. So they split it into two books when they tried to go YA
They,
with it.
they did, just because it was, big book. And so they couldn't have it. It's really the exact stuff we were talking about previously that just kind of size-wise, this book is longer than a traditional, YA book would be. The interesting thing, though, even if you go to certain Barnes and Nobles, it'll be shelved in the fantasy area, even though, again, it's been more split for the YA crowd. I mean, I'm not saying that's the case everywhere, but it seems like a really interesting, I'll say, marketing strategy that they went with. But yeah, so we can kind of dive into all that stuff.
So wait,
When
what's the title of the second half then?
the titles of it are actually different. So I want to say the first one is Out of the Two Rivers.
Okay, makes
And it's
sense.
not even called um, The Eye of the World. And then what is the second one? I would need to look up oh no, it's called From the Two Rivers is the first one in the split. And then the next one is uh, To the Blight. To the Blight.
So so did they do that with, so how many books are in this series, like just straight up?
14.
14, just the normal size 700 plus page
Right.
novels.
Right.
And then
Right.
so then for YA they split all of those into two?
I don't think they did it for, as I said, talking about Ravens, that's this whole other thing associated with it. I don't know if they did it for all of it. In some of my research that I was doing, I got that they split the first two books, but I don't know if they kept doing it after that.
And then they're like,
Um,
once you're eased in, then we got you. Then
they're
you're
like,
you're
you're
plowing
getting it
through.
right. At
The
least so that's the research. So I've done some preliminary research about Ravens. I'll do more though, because there's definitely some just interesting, I think, book publishing things to talk about when we discuss Ravens. So I think saving that until the very end and focusing more on just the story of Eye of the World this first time around is the way to go.
yeah, right on, right on. Okay, well, with that said, let's check out chapter two here, Strangers. And I think you just said before we came on that this is the we're getting a lot of introduction chapters here that's going to be happening.
I find it to be delightful.
All right.
As we get to meet these two individuals. But you go ahead. You go ahead with the
Well, yeah,
angry things.
what hit me about this chapter right here is I feel like in the sort of cliffhanger, if you would call it that, of the previous
Sure.
chapter,
Mm,
we like bring up Egg, and like
right.
Egg's out and about somewhere, and he's like, "Oh no, I want to see her, but I also don't want to see her," which seems to be his like kind of weird character thing. And then in this chapter, no Egg. We don't get any Egg.
Right.
She does not show up.
Denied. Denied.
I guess that's a good strategy though too, right? You gotta
I think it's
gotta keep
brilliant.
going if you want to get some egg in
I
here.
think it's brilliant. I think you were like, oh, I'm obviously going to get egg right now. And then we don't. We don't. We get these other mysterious people instead, which I think it's so fun, like as a bait and switch. And I also feel like this is a classic thing done. When you're reading books from multiple POV, you'll be reading one POV and you'll be like, oh my goodness, I'm about to learn this big thing. And then we move and we get this other POV and we're like, why am I getting this other POV? And they're like, oh wow, this other POV is so cool. And we get caught up in that, and then the reveal kind of can hit bigger later. So here, I think we're thinking, where's Egg? But then we meet Moiraine. We meet a little bit of land. going on there, and it gets real interesting. At least to me. But again, I want to hear what the lit side
So like the
thinks about
whole just kind of like absence makes the heart grow fonder in literary
it.
form.
Exactly.
Always leave them wanting more.
Precisely.
But you can do it on a perspective by perspective basis sort of idea.
Yeah, I think that that's what we see if, like for example, George R. R. Martin's writing, obviously, with many POVs. But I think we're seeing that same sort of idea here. We've been promised, if you will, egg, but we have also been hinting at these other, characters being there. And so we're just getting kind of slowly introduced to each of these. I mean, we can really look at these chapters being like, okay, this is the chapter where we meet one group of strangers. Then the next chapter, we get to meet the peddler, who we've heard about. And then you can even see from the following chapter, like, oh, that Gleeman we've been hearing about. You know what I mean? So it's like
Right.
boom, 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 boom as we meet these new people.
Yeah, so we've been promised so far. We've got Gleeman somewhere
Right.
hiding out in his room. We've
Exactly.
got Egg. We've
Mm.
got Neneve.
Yeah.
We've
Nanav,
got
I think we go. Either
the
way, though.
wait, say that again.
Yeah. I mean, I have listened to like 7 books with audio, so I should know. But I also have like the way ingrained in my head that I always said. So like Nynaeve. I
Which
can't
one?
remember which
You
one
got to
it
make the
is.
call, man. You got me. It's on you.
Nynaeve? Nynaeve? I'm gonna
N-
go with Nynaeve. I can't. I've got my way, but I can't. I'm gonna have to listen to the audiobook again before. But
I
anyway,
love the indecision here. Yeah, because I'm
gotta be
you're taking the
yeah.
heat for this, buddy. You're
Okay.
taking the heat.
Okay. I'm telling you, man, you've got this one way of saying all these names for decades, right? And then you listen to an audiobook, and then my wife is like saying those names, and I'm like, what? I'm like, so yeah, I'm still adjusting. I'm adjusting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So, okay, give me a let's do a little recap of what's happening here. They're putting away the booze. The
Mhm.
village council is having a big meeting. Mysterious. What are they talking about? Um, blah blah blah. Um, so what else happens here? We also hear like about how like the is it the blacksmith who's mad at Matt because
Yeah.
Matt caked his dogs in flour in an incredibly elaborate practical
That's
joke.
great. So good. So good.
All right. Oh yeah, he says nothing really. I didn't do anything really. I just
Yeah. No,
a
just
little animal
yeah.
cruelty is all I
Right.
did. It's cool.
Right.
It's
It's
fun.
all good. That's just flour. It's flour. They're fine. They loved it. Loved it.
All right, so that happens. Okay, so here we go. Ewan
Yeah.
shows
I,
up.
I should say, just to back up, we said that, like, this is the chapter where you meet Moiraine. But really, what's happened before that, which I think is brilliant, is we get this separation of age, which I just want to just quickly point out before we go past it, which
Right.
is this idea of the older man, the village council getting to talk about serious things, while the younger boys are being, well, young boys, doing chores, eating honey cakes, putting flour on dogs, talking about it.
What young
Um,
boys do. I mean, that
right,
was
young boys
my
do.
childhood for sure.
Right, exactly. And so I think getting that feel of this separation, and this is so cool because that indicates or makes us kind of live in the shoes of being a kid and what are the adults doing, but I kind of don't care. I care more about this Gleeman and these strangers, and it's interesting, as their perspective, which I think is really neat the way Robert Jordan does that here.
Yeah, right on, right on. And again, I'm gonna keep highlighting these because, like I
Yeah.
said in the beginning, I don't know how old these boys are.
One day,
It keeps
one
getting
day we'll
like
find
hinted
out.
at this in between land of man
Exactly.
versus boy, um,
Right.
married age or not married age, and like at a certain point, I'm like, oh man, just name a number, bro.
We
Just put
do we do eventually get a number, I want to say.
it.
Um, it's funny because not to talk about Ravens too much, Ravens is like full of numbers. Like Ravens
Oh
like
really?
tells you everybody's age. It's like this like she's 9, her sister's like 18, her other
Right,
sister's like 15. It's like all the numbers. And then you go and look at this. And it's funny that we're still denied. Like not only are we being
right.
denied, it's like, did you want to know their age? No, no. Like it's just I think that again, that also creates a bit of an every, man, woman feel of
Sure.
like, just being in that age where you're not an adult. Yeah, you're like on the cusp.
But maybe that was like one of the notes he got from like people after it was published. It was like, just tell us, Robert. And he's
It
like, oh, okay,
does
cool.
feel like it was written in response to reactions to like the prologue and these beginning chapters. But again, I swore we were going to talk about it, but bringing up the age, it is funny to see how many ages are just like given, like candy, like it's nothing. These ages, whereas here we have to work. We got to work to get to figure out, to try to calculate what age he is, which I think
Yeah,
is
it's so funny on this page because we straight up know how old Ewan is.
right, exactly. So he gives you like a frame of reference, and that's the thing, yeah. Where it's like, okay, we know Ewan is 14, so they got to be older than that, right? But they're not crazy old because they were just called, boys, basically. So yeah, no, that's what's so nice. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's like, don't get me wrong. I think there is a reality to like, when does someone say, oh, my best friend is this age and so am I? You know what I mean? So I think Robert's kind of, avoiding that while still providing a relative frame of reference.
All right, other things I want to point out here.
Do it.
Um, So here we get the thing that I totally missed last time about
Mm-hmm.
how like Matt was gonna tell him about the other strangers, but then Rand assumes he means the man in
Yep.
black, and then Matt's like, "Oh my gosh, the man in black." And then like to then kind of cover all that, we didn't bring up those other strangers until Matt suddenly reminded about them here, you know. And
Right.
honestly, without you like kind of explaining that to me, I probably wouldn't have gotten it until now when
Right.
Matt says, "Oh, here are the people I actually meant to tell you about."
I think that's okay though too, to like have this moment of being like, oh, that's what that meant. So I actually was thinking about you when I read this line when I was just rereading this chapter, and so I think it's nice to show that the information is there, right? Um,
Yeah,
Obviously, arguments can be made about any of these chapters of like when someone might get fed up or bounce off the prologue or bounce off because they can't figure out the age or because they don't know what Matt's talking about. But I feel like most of these are little things. If someone was going to bounce off this story, there'd be a larger reason.
yeah,
But yeah,
no, no.
I think it's nice
It
to see.
just kind of noted that he did cover
Yeah,
that here in this
yeah,
chapter. And then so then we get some more kind of negging on with the
mm.
wisdom here because
Oh yeah,
everybody's got to do it. Um she flares up at anything. Okay,
anything.
so I'm getting it. I'm getting it. Oh, so I highlighted this line. This is going to be the best spell time ever
Right, right.
because then it comes up in, well, we'll see at the very end of the chapter.
Yeah.
It comes up in
Mhm.
the narration.
Yep.
And I have some thoughts about that, but we will keep going. I just wanted to note it for the
No, for
future.
sure. That's a good point because in my reread I didn't notice that. I mean, I did in the moment, but when we get the chapter ender, I wasn't like, oh yeah, that's exactly what Matt said. Um, but I think Matt saying it here makes a lot of sense for his character, for the people they're learning about, all that stuff.
Did I miss this too? Did we miss the practical joke with the frogs? Or is that just like another
Ooh,
like
I
cast
felt
off
like that.
reference that we don't
I
really find out about?
wasn't there a fuck now when I did the reread and I was looking at that, I was like, oh yeah, they're just like referencing some other thing. But then I do feel like the earlier we did learn some practical jokes that Matt had played. Um, and it does make me wonder.
I just highlighted it because I was like, I don't know anything
Yeah,
with the frogs.
now I totally want to go back and find. I'm actually like looking. I don't know. Yeah, I definitely did not immediately come to
Oops.
mind. Like I just thought it was like, oh yeah, just another thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so then we kind of keep going, and what happens? Do the boys go outside? Oh, okay. I also missed this later that I'm seeing right now that I highlighted in the next chapter because I was
Mhm.
like, who's who and Tad? Oh yeah,
Right.
we did
Yeah, no,
find out who and Tad are here in like a
yeah,
single
their name
line that
drop.
my brain did not register.
This
Um
again, okay, I'm gonna try not to, but like this is again something that I think that Jordan does really well in these opening chapters is that he really lays the groundwork for people generally before we see them. With like just dropping Hugh and Tad, and then as you see, we see them later, right? Um, and you just don't get that in the Ravens. I feel like you're just getting like tons of people just like tossed at you left and right. So even though there are a lot of people in these first few chapters, I feel like we're eased into the majority of them.
It's interesting. It is interesting, kind of thinking that this is like, you know, a solid whatever decade or so before he writes that,
Right.
and the differences maybe in his writing or in his
Mhm,
approach
mhm.
there.
Totally.
Because when they do say who and Tad in the next chapter,
Mhm.
it's not like he doesn't say stableman who and Tad. He just says like who
Mhm.
and Tad, and then in the next line says the stableman again. But I was honestly like already turning back, going like, wait, who? What? Who is this? And then I was like, oh, I should have just kept reading to the next sentence, and they would have said the
Right.
stableman. But now I see what I was looking for. What I was looking for, who and Tad. Here they are.
Right. Right.
Um, but I don't. It'll be interesting to go back to compare. Um, Okay, so what's going on now? Where
So you
are
got
we?
the watched again line highlighted.
Oh, right, right. So at this part, I'm starting to think, okay, well, it was a magical being when he felt it before. So now
Mm,
these two new strangers are maybe also similarly magical being. Oh no, this is where we're getting a raven, and they're gonna throw a rock at a raven or
yeah,
whatever. So
exactly.
clearly, the raven's just the man in black in his beast form or something, right?
Sure, sure, yeah.
Sure. All right.
Well, no, I mean
So.
it's definitely like it's odd, right? So we've got. I think what Jordan's doing here is he's finding alternate ways to show oddity, right? Because like you're in the middle of town now, so getting a man in black staring at you would seem a little bit harder as opposed to the man in black kind of being on the edge of the woods, right? But you get this other creature like similar quality staring at you, and it's like, and then behaving oddly when they throw stones in it and it doesn't go away. Um, and then the way it flies away so violently with Moraine there, then gives you a sense of like
Mm,
what she is in relationship to that potential evil, you know?
hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they throw this rock at the Raven. The Raven just kind of
Mhm.
dodges it,
Right,
really,
right.
and sort of like mocks him. And
Yeah,
then he
very
flies
like
away,
left
and
foot.
then we get Moiraine, who is
Yeah,
quite fetching in her
quite fetching.
elaborate outfits and
Yes.
looking older but young
Mm-hmm.
simultaneously.
Okay.
Sounds like basically like little boy's wet dream basically is Marin in my mind. But she's like these three little, well, they're not little boys, right? Two men and a little boy who are like
Right,
completely immediately enamored of
right,
her. And why, yeah, why not? Why not?
right. And she's, old, like old but young, wise, mysterious, beautiful, coming from lands far away, that type of thing.
She got,
Um,
yeah, she got it all. This is a full
right.
package right here.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, there was another line that I liked when Ewan was describing her, saying that she was like a high lady, and then like Matt goes to describe her, and he like can't think of another way to describe her. He's like a high lady. He's like all bitter about it.
Mm,
So I feel like we do get those descriptions previously, and then when we hit, we're like, okay, what does a high lady look like? And so then I think these, because sometimes people, with certain fantasy writers, don't like how descriptive they are, right?
mm,
Like people will say like Tolkien goes on too long describing something, you know what I mean? And Robert Jordan can definitely be accused of that in certain cases as well. And this is one instance where we do get a rather, elaborate description of her. But because she was set up to look so different than the kind of regular people, I feel it's sort of earned. What was your take on this? Because you did mention that like we with her like looks or cloak. I think you said something about her description. So how do you feel about the
Oh
paragraph about
yeah,
her?
no, I like the paragraph. I think it's earned to do a big long description here of
Mhm.
clothing. Also because that's what would jump out to your
Right,
POV character. I mean, maybe sometimes that's where like the disconnect happens, you know, where
right,
like you're really describing this whole outfit or this whole look, whereas to the POV character it might not really be that remarkable. So why
right,
is she thinking about all this whole description if she's the POV
Hmm.
character or something like
Hmm.
that. Here, though, definitely Rand, this would be the thing he would immediately focus on. So it's fully justified, and
Right.
yeah, I think you need it. And it doesn't, and honestly, it doesn't really go along that long. I mean, he's getting us
Yeah.
right back to dialogue, and all
Yeah,
that.
it's pretty quick. We get like a paragraph into another paragraph, right? So it's like mainly two, but one of them is kind of threaded with, other things about Matt, and and named her a lady from a Gleeman's Tale, so on and so forth. But like here in the second one where you've got the highlights, there is a lot of like, her clothing was strange to him. And so it is very much in his perspective. So cool, cool. I was just, I did wonder about that. I'm going to have another one a little bit later where I think it's almost slightly surprising we don't get a description like this.
Interesting.
I'll wait for your next one. But this was a section I was very interested to hear your take on. So
No,
cool.
yeah, I liked it, and then you kind of sneak in the little serpent eating its tail type,
Right, right.
dealio, which I'm sure is important to Jordan here. I want to make one more note. We get yet another crapping on the knave moment. I think we're up to like
Constant, my friend.
six now at this
Well,
point.
just
Um,
to talk about that snake eating its tail, how much are you being affected by the pictures at the start of chapters? The symbols.
oh, not at all. I probably should be paying more attention to that,
No, it's
shouldn't
cool.
I?
It's cool. I mean, I don't. That's not really a literary device too often, is it?
Oh, the
Like,
like Ouroboros? The
mm, like having a symbol at the start of a chapter
Oh
that
yeah,
would
yeah.
provide some insight about what that chapter is focused on.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, I honestly, didn't even pay attention when we did that first one when
Mm.
it said earlier ravens. I think it was the first time I realized, oh, there were little pictures of ravens. That's adorable.
Yep.
And then I kind of felt like it was still all just pictures of ravens, but no, they're changing the picture each time. Is that what's
Yeah,
happening?
yeah. So on the very first chapter, chapter one,
Mm,
you get the wheel with the snake biting its own tail in an
mm,
infinity symbol,
mm.
and so like that, especially because with this, when it's like though we recognize the great serpent, even older symbol for the eternity than the wheel of time, like we can see that picture from chapter one. It's not an exact picture of a ring, but that idea of that snake infinity symbol woven through the wheel of time. Um, and so it just does create some potential imagery. And then for the next chapter, the chapter Rereading the Strangers has the ravens on it. And so, if this is the first time you're seeing it, we saw the same picture in the Ravens chapter, which is why you're feeling it's repetitive, because that's, oh man, I can't not talk about the Ravens chapter. Some of the Ravens stuff is repetitive, right? Because in the Ravens chapter, there are ravens watching.
Right.
And then in this chapter, you got ravens
Damn
watching
you,
somebody.
Ravens chapter. You're messing me
I can't,
all
I
up.
can't I can't stop. But anyway, so we get the picture of the ravens, which I think is an interesting choice as opposed to giving a picture about, for example, Moraine or something. And then
Mhm.
we get a really interesting symbol for chapter three we may not even be recognizing. Also, every chapter does end with that infinity snake symbol and the wheel, at least in this 30th anniversary edition. I don't know if that's in the new one.
Okay.
But anyway, point is that there are some symbols that we could also be latching onto. And I was curious, as a literary reader, if those were standing out to you or just being completely ignored. And it's like it
This is where, I don't want
yeah.
to stand for all literary readers here. There are
Nope,
probably many
you're obviously
other
representing them
literary
all.
readers who would pay attention to those things with fine-tooth comb, but I'm just like, what? No, pictures? This isn't a picture book.
Oh yeah, no, no. It does look. I'm double checking. Yeah, it looks like actually, yeah, every chapter ends with that like wheel of time symbol, the snake
Okay.
biting its tail on the wheel.
Cool, cool.
So,
Also want to say Nynaeve being crapped on here
mhm.
again about her age, which I think
Right.
has come up like a couple times. She's a
Yeah, yeah,
youngin.
yeah.
She too
Yep.
young for this
She's too young
wisdom.
and she's sensitive about it.
She's sensitive about it, yeah,
Right.
indeed. Okay. Oh, and now like Rand directly connects Moraine to Egg
Right.
here in this sentence.
Yep.
So, he definitely has the hots for her. And then they do this, she does this thing where she gives everybody a coin. I
Right.
also like how they like immediately just throw Ewan or whatever like under the bus here that they're like,
Right.
"Ooh, we're not going to tell him we got the good coin and he got the crap
Right,
coin. Like, and they don't
right,
even have to like say something to each other. They just look at each other and they're like, "Yup, we're not telling them."
right, right. I think that's a really cool moment. But it's interesting to say that about having the hots for the Moiraine because maybe again, just from I've got too much information. But when reading that, I wasn't initially thinking in that way. But I do agree that it's cool that we get this sort of parallels that like he's had interactions with women to a degree. And so like he can notice similar qualities between them in that regard.
Wait, so
And so
you
I think
didn't?
that, even though we're not getting egg right now, or Egwene, we will, we continue to get her name dropped a little bit.
Yeah. So are you saying when you read this, you didn't get the impression that like all three of these boys totally have the hots for Moraine right here in
Mm,
this scene?
I feel like it's because she's not sexualized a great deal in her description, but that's also because I think of a particular writing style that Robert Jordan uses, which is more what can be the classier. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the way like we're not getting heaving bosoms and stuff like that.
Sure, sure.
So much of this. I mean, or when things are described, and don't get me wrong, there are some descriptions later in the book, but in this particular one, it was more just that yes, she's beautiful, but then the descriptions are about the way her clothes look, not the way her clothes like hug her body or something,
Oh,
or
yeah,
the way
yeah.
her necklace like is tight around her like throat or something, or dangling down into her chest, or something along those lines. And so there's kind of I feel they are in awe of her completely, and they absolutely want to do whatever she says, right? So I absolutely get that. But in terms of a sexual attraction, I think that assumption makes perfect sense of boys this age looking at a beautiful, mysterious woman, whose age is like looking young, but also old at the same time. But yeah, that didn't leap off the page of me, I think, because of some of the choices Jordan makes in the description here.
And maybe it's me like trying to like I do kind of cast things on screen, when I'm reading it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm like seeing in my mind what does the movie of this
Right.
look like, right? And maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's like a sickness that all kind of like modern readers have now that maybe even
Mm-hmm.
just a couple generations ago people didn't read with that. But I see a scene where like three young guys are completely tongue-tied because right at the beginning they're
Right.
awkward as all get out, right? Like no
Totally.
doubt they don't know how to talk
Mm-hmm.
anymore properly. Rand doesn't know what to say or how to address her without, feeling embarrassed that he did it wrong. And that just reads as crushing on this
Right.
lady to me, like hardcore.
Totally. Yeah, and I mean they're definitely behaving in that way. I guess for me, it's not as overt, right? Which I like. I like that it's more subtle, that we more just get a description of what they're doing, that they're having, that they're awkward, they're having trouble deciding what to say, as opposed to these sort of sexualized descriptions in this case, because then I think it creates more of a feeling of respect that this almost, fairy-like creature in front of them that's so beyond their ken, that kind of idea.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not
but
lecherous at all, but
yeah.
you're never gonna sell me that they don't totally have the hots for
Right. No,
her.
I'm not looking to. I'm just saying that I think it is um, interesting when we're doing these kind of like line by line breakdowns to see that Jordan made specific choices in the description and like didn't do overtly sexualized
Yeah,
descriptions of
yeah.
Moraine, which I think works well.
Right on. So now she gives them these two coins, which are like
Mhm.
worth a ton, but they're not gonna sell them or get rid of them
Mhm.
or whatever. Because okay, so be straight with me here. She's just basically just recruited them into some like they're already stuck now in like
Oh
whatever
yeah.
she's got planned. Like this isn't just like
Mhm.
do some favors for me. This is like, oh,
Right.
you're
Right.
coming on the quest and you now have no choice
Right.
because you've
Right.
taken the magic
You're
coins
right.
or
You've taken the
whatever.
magic coin. It's over. It's over. You accepted the Yeah, no, and I think that then creates a promise to the reader, especially since the cover of the book, no matter which version you have. Well, no, that's not true. Then the newest version, they're all symbols. Darn it. Okay, anyway, uh, but on most covers you would have of this book, Moiraine is front and center on that cover.
Hmm.
And so, you got a sense like, yeah, here is where it begins for sure.
All right, all right. Just a little callback, different faces, always the same
Mm,
man. The idea that
yep.
the dragon comes back over and over
Yo.
and over again. All right, cool. What else happens here? So she then wanders off with her dude,
Mhm.
Lan.
Yep,
All
yep. Who's
right.
also pictured on the main cover. So we see them as a pair constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And just another mention of Gleeman. I mean, we keep talking about this dude. He's getting
Oh
like
yeah.
the biggest I think like wind up of all the characters. Weirdly.
There's
Um
been a fair amount. And again, I think it's another bait and switch, right? Because we've heard more about Egwene and the Gleeman than we
mm,
have about the strangers. Like we didn't even really know Moraine's name or anything, right? But then that's the one that we get to see, right?
yeah.
So you're preserving the mystery of the Gleeman while still giving us something new and interesting. And so I think that's the advantage of creating this delayed satisfaction is you can then put in these other things that are keeping the reader, engaged and interested. I want to ask you, how do you feel about some of the wording that happened here, like the warder, the Trollocs? I mean, it's not like we're getting the amount of world terms we did in the prologue, right? Nothing can match
Right.
that. But how was that for you?
Yeah, no, I think that all kind of works for me.
Mhm.
We say warder and we do get maybe a little bit of what they are, at least
Mhm.
what they wear or whatever, and they
Right.
seem like
Exactly.
warriors. And then they're the one fighting the Trollocs. So
Mhm.
okay, whoever the Trollocs are. Maybe they're
Right.
monsters, maybe they're just people, but yeah,
Right.
that did I think like that's so far removed from what's happening here that
Mhm.
like that kind of reference doesn't stop me or hold me up as much like in the prologue where it's crucially important. Kind of what a lot of these things mean. But in the next chapter, there is one that pops up that wasn't capitalized, and I'm like, wait, hold on. I feel like I understand the language
Rule
now.
breaking.
This needs to be capitalized, but we'll see it
No,
in
I'm
the
gonna, I'm
next
gonna be good
chapter.
to talk about that one. That'll be good. That'll be
Yeah.
good. And I like you got the highlights here for that moment you were talking about that I think is very well done, where we get this clear separation between like Matt Rand and Ewan, right? Where it's just a couple years difference, but that can be all the difference in the world when you're kind of coming of age.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very well represented here.
And Rand throws him under the bus immediately. I think she gave it for you to spend. You
Right.
jerk. What?
What? You don't think he's being sweet right there? No, you don't think he's being.
No, he's like, go spend your coin. We got the good coins. We're not gonna tell you that. We're in the club. You're
Uh,
not little guy. Maybe come back in who knows how many years when you're our age.
the mystery. Uh,
All right, so to wrap this chapter up. Let's talk about this
right.
last line.
Yes.
I
Yes.
like. I feel like this was a line to wrap up the chapter. It did not
Right.
feel to me like Rand's mindset here. I do
Mm,
kind of get on like an intellectual level. Okay, Beltane's kind of awesome. There's all this stuff going on.
right.
It's super exciting. This still feels like Matt's words to
Yeah.
me instead of
Yeah.
Rand. I feel like Rand is just a little bit more like put out a little bit by all of this. I mean, he seems like most worried about the man in black thing. The new strangers, yeah, he's totally entranced by this lady, but like I don't know. I didn't see him at this point going like, "Oh, can't wait till bell time." Yeah. You know what I mean?
I, I do hear you. Honestly, I even caught a little bit when I was rereading it with Rand saying, "You'll see," to Owen's question of like, Rand, is there a Gleeman?
Mhm.
Because Rand hasn't seen the Gleeman yet.
Right.
He's just taking Matt's, well, not Matt's world. Like, he's got the word from the council, right? So, he trusts them. He believes them, right? But it almost, it didn't feel, that line felt more like a Matt line to me. Like, you'll see it or something like that. So I do hear you that this very end, didn't feel quite as much in Rand's perspective as I would expect. And also, I do agree with you that Rand does feel, you said, like, put upon, like he's got this sort of weight of the writer that is worrying him, right? And they've met these new strangers, and they got this one guy with a color shifting cloak. So you maybe that's the guy in black cloak. But yeah,
Mm,
I get his excitement. I do get as a kid that you can like kind of push worry to the side. But I no no I'm with you. I'm with you. It did seem like this was meant to be kind of an end stop, but it does feel slightly forced to me. And especially because, as you pointed out, Matt says this exact line earlier.
right.
I get friends getting in the same mindset as each other. Exactly, right? But like Matt isn't doing that. Matt's like, if he ever wakes up, he's almost being a little bit of a downer right there. So for then to Rand to go up in contrast, I agree. I am a bit surprised by the choices made at the very end of this chapter.
Yeah, yeah. But I think, Robert was just like, I need to cap this chapter because I got some more people to
Right.
introduce and I need to break it up for the dear reader here. So that's what we are going to get into next episode. Some more introductions and
Oh,
maybe
yes.
somebody I have been waiting for so far. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we will be back next episode with a chapter 3.
Chapter 3.